There are nights that hold their breath before the world changes. In the spring of 1986, the city of Pripyat lay bathed in an amber calm. Its streets were young, filled with laughter, factory smoke, and the quiet hum of Soviet dreams. Children slept beneath walls painted with atomic pride. And beyond those sleeping blocks stood a monument to human progress, the Chernobyl nuclear power station. 4 reactors strong, a 5th under construction, a city built to feed it, a people built to believe in it. But belief can be fragile, and on one night in April, it cracked. In the heart of the plant, men worked the midnight shift. Routine, repetition, procedure. They were testing the limits of the reactor's safety, a simple experiment meant to simulate a power failure. But beneath their calm, the reactor itself, a beast of graphite and steam, was waiting for the moment humanity asked too much of it. They pressed forward into the test. They lowered control rods, cut coolant flow, ignored the whisper of rising heat. Numbers blurred. Warnings blinked red. Somewhere deep inside the core, uranium atoms began to dance too fast, splitting not in control, but in defiance. 1:23 and 40 seconds a.m., the moment the Earth screamed. A column of light split the night. The roof lifted like a lid, and the heavens were torn open. Graphite burned at temperatures the sun would envy. And in that instant, a test became a tragedy. The reactor had exploded, the first of its kind, the last of its innocence. The first to answer were not soldiers, not scientists, but firemen. Men with no warning, no armor, no idea of what waited in the smoke. They climbed onto the burning roof to fight a fire that was not a fire, but the breath of radiation itself. One touched a piece of graphite. It burned through his glove. He thought it was hot metal. He didn't know it was the heart of an atom. In the city nearby, they slept. Mothers turned in their beds. Fathers dreamed of payday. The sky glowed faintly, a beauty too strange to fear. Children pointed out their windows, whispering that the stars had come closer. By morning, the wind had carried the invisible across forests and rivers. The radiation had no color, no scent, no mercy. Yet the men in charge said little. The city still played. The trains still ran. And above them all, the reactor smoldered, its heart broken, its silence deadly. History doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers before it kills. Dawn came quietly over Pripyat. The light looked the same. The world sounded the same. But in every breath, the air carried something invisible, something that did not belong. It drifted through open windows, settled on playgrounds, glowed faintly on the wind. Yet life went on. Mothers washed dishes. Children chased each other beneath a strange blue sky. The city was alive for now. The heroes who fought the night's fire began to fall silent. Their skin burned without flame. Their lips cracked and bled. They laughed weakly, thinking it was exhaustion, until their laughter turned to screams. They were taken to the hospital, their bodies already glowing with death they could not see. In Moscow, words were waved like uranium. No evacuation, they said. A small fire, they said. Everything is under control. But the Geiger counters disagreed. In laboratories, needles leapt to the edge of their dials, beyond what the instruments could read. Silence became their policy, denial their armor. That night, families gathered on a bridge to watch the light show. They thought it was beautiful, a once-in-a-lifetime sight. The wind blew softly toward them. Parents lifted their children to see. None of them would live long enough to understand what they had witnessed. The bridge would later earn a name whispered in sorrow, the Bridge of Death. It had no color, no taste, no sound. It entered lungs, blood, bone. It whispered through the air vents, glowed faintly in the dust, clung to children's toys. The city smiled at its own funeral, unaware of the burial already underway. 36 hours after the explosion, the order finally came. Buses rolled into the city, green and loud, carrying soldiers who wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. A calm voice on the radio announced, "Comrades, the situation is temporary. Bring only what you need for 3 days." 3 days. But no one would ever return to sleep in those beds again. Engines rumbled. Doors slammed. The city exhaled for the last time. They left food on tables. keys in locks, letters half-written. The buses rolled away, one after another, a procession of ghosts leaving their own lives behind. The wind followed them, whispering the truth they were not allowed to hear. And then there was silence. Pripyat, once a city of 50,000, fell still. The playgrounds forgot laughter. The clocks stopped ticking. Only the wind and the crows remained to count the hours. The air hummed faintly, a lullaby for the dead and the dying. They called it the zone, a place erased from maps, sealed by fences, guarded by silence. Helicopters flew overhead, dropping sand, lead, and boron into the glowing wound. Men in masks moved like shadows, cleaning what could not be cleaned. They were called liquidators, hundreds of thousands of men sent to fight an invisible war. They shoveled graphite from rooftops, knowing each second meant another year of life lost. Their courage was quiet. Their reward, a medal, a cough, a lifetime of pain. On television, Moscow said nothing was wrong. But in Sweden, Geiger counters sang. The secret could not be contained. The world had learned the truth, not from confession, but from the wind. And so the silence deepened. Inside those empty rooms, the echoes remained. Toys, photographs, dishes, fragments of lives sealed beneath the dust of history. Every chair, every curtain, every brick became an artifact of a lie too heavy to speak aloud. Pripyat was gone, but the wind still remembered, and what it carried would not stop at the border of a city or a nation. They came because someone had to. Conscripts, miners, engineers, men pulled from factories and farms. No one told them what waited beyond the checkpoint, only that their country needed them. They signed their names beneath blank orders, boarded trucks that smelled of diesel and fear, and rolled toward the glowing wound of Chernobyl. The road to the zone was lined with silence. Pine needles shimmered silver from radiation. Birds no longer sang. When the trucks stopped, the air felt heavy, like breathing through glass. They called it the roof of death. 45 seconds at a time, that was all a man could endure. They ran into the blaze, shoveled fragments of the reactor, and ran back down. Every second added a scar no doctor could see. When their shift ended, their skin stung as if from sun and winter combined. Beneath the earth, miners carved a tunnel under the burning core. They dug not for coal, but for time. Their task, to build a chamber that would cool the molten fuel before it burned through to the water table, before it poisoned half a continent. They worked naked to survive the heat, cursing the reactor as though it were a living thing. When asked for lead aprons, they laughed. If the heat doesn't kill us, the dust will, they said, and kept digging. In a commandeered hotel, scientists built a war room of numbers and fear. They argued about isotopes, half-lives, containment domes, about how to reason with a thing that could not hear reason. Their faces aged by the hour. "We're writing equations for ghosts," one said. When pumps failed, water filled the chambers beneath the reactor. If the molten core reached it, the explosion would have torn Europe in half. 3 volunteers stepped forward, engineers who knew what the mission meant. They walked into the dark water, the dosimeter screaming. The lights flickered, the valve turned, and the water began to drain. They surfaced smiling, men who had just saved a continent. None lived long enough to see the thanks. The zone was not empty, not yet. Dogs waited at doorsteps. Cows wandered through empty fields. Soldiers were ordered to clear them all. No survivors, no carriers of dust. Many aimed away, tears fogging their masks. Mercy and obedience wrestled quietly in the silence of the woods. When all else failed, they buried the land itself. Villages disappeared under layers of sand. Homes, tractors, fields, dreams. The earth was sealed like a wound, a wound that still bled beneath the bandage. At night, the men wrote letters they would never mail. They spoke of strange winds, metallic tastes, and stars that flickered even at noon. Some begged for forgiveness. Others said nothing, only pressed a fingerprint at the bottom of the page, as if to leave proof they had once existed. Months later, they built the tomb, a shell of steel and sorrow encasing Reactor 4. Inside, the core still glowed, silent and alive. It was called the sarcophagus, a coffin for a machine that refused to die. When it was finished, the workers signed their names on the concrete walls, tiny human signatures against eternity. Some returned years later. They found their apartments as they had left them. Clocks still stopped at 1:23. The silence was heavier than radiation. They stood in their own doorways, strangers in the ruins of memory. The men who stayed gave everything so others could go on. Their names faded from medals, from monuments, but not from the wind. The forest grew back. The wolves returned. Life, stubborn and unafraid, began again, above the bones of heroes. They built a city to power the future. In a single night, the future melted. And yet, amid the ash, humanity endured. For every mistake that destroys, there is a hand that rebuilds. For every silence, a voice that remembers. Decades later, the wind still whispers their names. New generations walk the borders of the zone, sons and daughters of those who never came home. They carry cameras, not Geiger counters, curiosity, not orders. Yet when they stand in the playground, they swear they hear laughter in the air, faint, childlike, carried by the ghosts of 1986. Time has softened what fire could not. Forests have swallowed the ruins. Wolves, bears, and birds now rule what was once humanity's forbidden garden. Radiation has faded, but memory lingers, heavier than dust. They are called the returners, babushkas who came back when no one else dared. This is our land, they said. They plant potatoes in poisoned soil, feed chickens that glow faintly under moonlight, and live between two worlds, the living and the remembered. The scientists still come, not to stop the past, but to understand it. They study the trees that drink cesium, the mushrooms that glow faintly in the dark. They ask the same question whispered since the night of the explosion. How could something so human create something so eternal? In 2016, a new tomb was built, a dome of hope, a promise that the fire would never rise again. Underneath it, Reactor 4 still breathes in silence, its heart sealed but not extinguished. There were 600,000 liquidators, men who stood between the world and oblivion. Many died without recognition, their medals gathering dust in drawers. Yet their sacrifice hums through every light that burns safely tonight. Every time a reactor cools instead of explodes, their ghosts nod in approval. The city still waits. Pripyat, once called the city of the future, now preserved like an unfinished dream. Its windows stare blankly at the forest, reflecting nothing but years. Time stopped here not because it had to, but because it was told to. The radiation drifted beyond borders, across fields, oceans, generations. It seeped into memory, into culture, into the way humanity looked at its own hands. The world learned a word it could never forget: Chernobyl. Artists turned tragedy into myth. Pain became paint, silence became song. The world tried to explain the unexplainable, to give meaning to the sound of an atom breaking. Chernobyl was not a monster born from machines. It was born from ambition, from the human need to reach further than we can see. And somewhere within us all, that same reactor hums quietly, waiting to be understood. Every glowing window owes its safety to those who stood in Chernobyl's shadow. Every whisper of electricity carries a memory, the sound of courage beneath the static, the promise that such darkness will never come again. In the end, Chernobyl became more than a place. It became a warning carved into the bones of the earth, a reminder that progress without humility burns brighter than the sun, and dies faster too. Asterisk, but even in ruin, life found a way. Moss grew, wolves howled, and the wind carried the names of the lost across the endless pines.